Hey everybody, it's Antnie here, and today we're taking a look at the 7Artisans 35mm f2 lens for the Sony E-mount system. This is a full frame designed lens, but it will also work on your APS-C style cameras. So if you are going to be shooting this on a crop censored camera like a Sony a6000, you're going to notice that it does crop in. So instead of it being a 35mm equivalent like it would be on your Sony a7, it's going to be around 52 to 53 millimeters. 35mm is one of my favorite focal lengths to shoot on a full frame camera. It's, I think, perfect for street photography. You can get some nice wide shots if you step back, and if you step in, you can get some nice close-ups. This is one of the cheapest lenses you can get for your Sony full-frame camera. It comes in at $180 brand new, but don't let that $180 low price tag scare you away. It feels really solid in the hands. It's got a nice metal construction. It feels like an old vintage lens. Comes in at about 9.5 ounces. The reason this is a budget lens is because it's got no autofocus. It's got no electronics in there. It's all manual. Since there's no electronics on the back of this thing, you're gonna get no metadata with your shots. The focusing ring on this camera is incredibly smooth, and it's just a short distance to go from the minimum focusing distance of about 13 inches all the way to your furthest infinite. It has a 43mm filter size on here. I wasn't shooting any of my shots with any filters on. One nifty thing this tiny little lens has packing is a built-in lens hood. It's definitely going to be needed when you're shooting outside in the sunlight because this thing does flare quite a bit, especially when you're shooting wide open at f2. You're going to be getting some noticeable flare with that direct sun. Even if it's off to the side, I was noticing a decent amount of flare. This lens has a rounded 10-blade aperture, which is really nice. You get some creamy, smooth bokeh when you're shooting wide open. You're going to get a lot of distortion and blur around the edges. So this lens is clicked, and sometimes I've been noticing it is a little hard to change your aperture. I'll be shooting at f2 and I want to quickly get to a 5.6 or something. You gotta really get in there and crank it, hold the body of your camera tightly and kind of twist that. Wish it was a little smoother, maybe even de-clicked would have been nice. So since I do shoot on Sony and this is a manual lens, there are some helpful features that the Sony cameras have to make this just a little easier to shoot with. You have the in-body stabilization, which helps, especially if you're shooting at lower shutter speeds. You have the focus peaking when you're shooting wide open on this and you want to see what you're getting in focus. And then you also have your punch in to zoom. If you really want to get a specific part of your image tack sharp, you can punch in and zoom and then get your adjustments right in there. It's going to be a pretty decent low light performer. You can be doing some night photography, and with the in-body stabilized Sony camera, you can get some nice 1/10, 1/15, even 1/5 of a second shutter speeds, hand-holding, manual focusing with this lens. I was pleasantly surprised with some handheld shots with the in-body stabilization on the Sony cameras. When you stop this lens down, you're gonna get a lot sharper images. They're gonna be more contrasty, punchier, they're just gonna look nicer. And I think for 180 bucks, it's pretty hard to beat the images you're getting out of this guy, especially when you stop down. So I wanted to do a whole bunch of testing with this lens around town here, especially street style photography. And of course, it had to be snowing the last 2 weeks up here, and a lot more snow than we usually get in the winters. So I'm out there freezing my butt off to get some sample and test shots for you guys. So I want to do just a couple little comparisons here, shooting this lens wide open and then stopping it down. You can see here at the laundry and cleaners down the street, shooting wide open, it's very soft and blurry around the edges. Only in the dead center is it really sharp. Then when you compare it to something at 5.6, a lot sharper across the whole frame and a lot more contrast, a punchier image. I think it just looks a little better here. Comparing here the Shucks and Meadows Park sign, you can see when it's shot wide open, very soft around the edges. Going all the way in, it doesn't get sharp until about the middle of the sign. About f5.6, you can see a lot more of it's in focus, more contrasty, just a punchier image, a lot less soft. Comparing here again, f2 and f5.6, you can see the background here, you got a lot more blur at f2. And then here at f5.6, you got a sharper image, a little more contrasty, colors look a little better, but less blown out background. So here's two images of Fire Engine 5 station in Bellingham, shot wide open. You can see the bricks are very soft around the edges, only really is Engine 5 tack sharp in this image. You can notice some vignetting around the edges as well. When you stop it down, a lot more of the bricks are in focus. It's a contrastier image, much sharper. I think it looks nice. Comparing some palettes in the snow here, shot wide open at f2, you can see that just the center of the wood here is sharp. It gets very soft and distorted the further out you go, and of course noticing that vignetting. When you stop down, even the darker black palette is coming into focus. It's a lot sharper and more contrasty. The last photo comparison here is a fruits and vegetables stand someone had in front of their house. When you shoot it wide open, it's a little softer of an image, less sharp as all the other examples have shown, but it has a really nice separation between the background. When you stop it down, it's of course sharper, more contrasty, punchier image. These two images of the basketball hoop really show off the vignetting that you're gonna get on these. You can see it's much darker around the edges. Here are some of my favorite photographs I've taken over the last couple weeks with this lens. I recently took it on a trip down to Gig Harbor on our anniversary, and my girlfriend Sarah pointed out after the trip that almost all of her favorite pictures were taken on this lens, and that's a testament. I was also shooting on a Zeiss 35 f2.8 lens, and she was picking pictures from this over the Zeiss, which was very surprising. I didn't do too much editing to any of these photos, a couple little adjustments here and there, maybe to fix some highlights or shadows, maybe adjust the contrast just a tiny bit, but I wasn't doing too much editing on these. I kind of wanted to see how they would turn out straight out of camera. Here's Sarah at Gig Harbor in our hotel room. You can see really nice separation between her and the background. It's just a good looking image. Two pictures of Sarah and Circa. You guys were asking for some more Circa in my YouTube videos, and here she is, going strong. She's an old girl. Here's two more hand-painted garden signs. I really liked how this lens captured the contrast of light. I think it did a pretty good job, especially here you can see in the street and on the trees. I think it's just a really nice looking image. Here's one of my favorite images that I took using this lens. I love how the van turned out and the lighting stopped down almost completely. I think this was done at either f11 or f16. I wanted to see how much I can get in focus. But you'll even notice at the edges it's still got some distortion and blur, even when you stop all the way down. You can also get some really vibrant colors from this lens when you have the right conditions and some nice light hitting it. One of my other favorite images I took using this lens is of a church here in Bellingham. I did this one in black and white. Wasn't much color anyways because it was snowy and the church just doesn't have much color. I think it turned out really nice and I really like this one. The last thing I want to do for this lens video is take a look at some of the pictures printed out. I have a Canon Pixma Pro 100 and these are some of the results. I used a variety of different papers and sizes and they're kind of just to test out. These aren't like definitive going in my collection, but I just wanted to see what kind of results I'd get on paper. Here are the 8.5 by 11 images that I picked to print. The first one being the stopped down image of the moon during the day. The blues across the sky look really nice. You can still see some of the vignetting coming through in the corners, but I think it looks all right. Tree's pretty sharp. The shadows, you can't really make out too much in there. I didn't boost those up very much. Here's the black and white picture of the WTA bus stop. You can see a little distortion here on the edges, especially with the vertical lines, and you can see it's very soft along the edges, but it's quite sharp in the middle here. Pretty good looking black and white. Here again, one of my favorite pics from this lens. I think the bus just looks really nice. The colors came out well, and the light in the middle here is not overexposed. Here's the church. I printed a couple of these. I couldn't get it right. The black and white just kept coming out a little too muddy on these. It's not even coming out that much in video, but in person, this is just not the best black and white print I've done, and I'm hopefully gonna get some better ones done of these. And here are the 4x6 ones I printed out, one of Sarah and Circa, and 3 of the garden signs. This lens can easily be beat image quality wise by something that costs almost $1,000. But for 180 bucks, this is a really hard lens to beat, especially if you're on a budget. Thank you so much for taking a look at my video on the 7Artisans 35mm f2 manual focusing prime lens for the Sony E mount cameras. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're interested in more photography stuff, please take a look at my channel. I'll have more coming out soon.